What if the biggest threat to NATO's air power dominance didn't come from Russia, didn't come from China, but from inside Europe itself? Not from a superpower, not from a trillion-dollar defense program, but from a small, neutral-minded country with a fighter jet built for survival, not spectacle. In recent months, military planners inside NATO began quietly asking a dangerous question. What if the future of air warfare doesn't belong to the F-35, but to something far cheaper, harder to kill, and impossible to politically control? That question has a name: JAS-39 Gripen. And what Sweden just proved with this aircraft is exactly what NATO feared most. This isn't about speed. This isn't about stealth. This is about control, survivability, and independence. And once you understand what Gripen just demonstrated, you'll understand why the Pentagon went quiet.
For decades, NATO has operated under an unspoken doctrine. Air superiority must be centralized, standardized, and American-led. That's why most NATO air forces fly U.S. jets. That's why logistics, software updates, mission data files, and weapons integration flow through Washington. The F-16, the F-18, and now the F-35. The logic is simple. Same jets, same systems, same command structure. That makes coordination easy. But it also creates dependence. And Gripen breaks that model completely. Gripen wasn't designed to win air shows. It was designed to survive the first 72 hours of a real war. Sweden assumed air bases would be destroyed, runways cratered, command centers hit first, satellites jammed, supply chains disrupted. So Saab asked a different question. What if our fighter had to operate alone, cut off, hunted, and outnumbered? That single assumption shaped everything. Gripen can take off from highways, be refueled and rearmed by 6 conscripts in under 10 minutes, operate without constant satellite support, fight with distributed command, not centralized control. This already worried NATO, but that wasn't the shock. During recent multinational exercises, quietly observed, not publicly advertised, Gripen did something NATO planners did not expect. It didn't dominate by stealth. It didn't dominate by raw power. It dominated by availability and persistence. While fifth-generation aircraft cycled back to base for maintenance, software checks, secure data uploads, climate-controlled hangars, Gripens kept flying. Again, and again, and again. In simulated high-attrition scenarios, Gripen squadrons generated more sorties per day than far more expensive aircraft. In modern war, the jet that's airborne wins. And that terrified planners. Here's the part that never makes press releases. Modern fighters are software weapons. And the F-35's software is updated remotely, is controlled through multinational data systems, requires U.S. approval for certain mission files. Gripen? Sweden controls its source code, its mission software, its electronic warfare libraries, its weapons integration timeline. That means no kill switch, no update denial, no political veto in a crisis. For NATO unity, that's dangerous. Because once one country proves independence works, others start asking questions. Modern NATO air power assumes protected megabases. Gripen assumes none will survive. So Sweden built a system where
Jets hide in forests, refuel on roads, relocate constantly, communicate with decentralized nodes. In war games, Gripen squadrons were nearly impossible to suppress. You couldn't destroy what you couldn't find, and more importantly, you couldn't paralyze the system by hitting a single headquarters. That breaks NATO's traditional air doctrine. No official condemnation. No press briefings. No loud denials. Just silence. Because Gripen doesn't threaten NATO by fighting it. It threatens NATO by inspiring alternatives. Every country watching saw this. You don't need a trillion-dollar ecosystem to defend your airspace. And that idea is radioactive to centralized power. This is where things get uncomfortable. Canada hesitated. Finland studied Gripen seriously. Other mid-tier air forces quietly reassessed. Not because Gripen is better than the F-35 in every way, but because it offers something the F-35 never can: sovereignty in wartime. Once that idea enters the conversation, procurement stops being technical and becomes political. This moment was never about declaring the F-35 a failure. The F-35 remains the most advanced, networked, and sensor-rich fighter NATO has ever fielded. It dominates in environments where centralized command, secure data links, and protected infrastructure remain intact. No serious military planner believes Gripen is here to replace the F-35 across NATO. But that's exactly why this moment matters. What Gripen exposed is not a weakness in the F-35 as a machine, but a vulnerability in the assumptions behind it. The F-35 represents a model of air power built on centralized command and control, shared software and mission data, large defended air bases, political and logistical integration with the United States. Gripen represents a completely different philosophy: decentralized operations, national control over software and upgrades, dispersed basing and rapid relocation, independence in wartime decision-making. NATO's concern isn't that Gripen outperforms the F-35 in a dogfight. It's that Gripen changes the conversation. Once air forces see that a smaller, cheaper aircraft can remain operational when infrastructure collapses while retaining full national control, the idea of a single, universal fighter begins to weaken. That creates a dangerous precedent for NATO. Mixed fleets instead of standardized ones, independent doctrines instead of unified command, reduced political leverage over allied air forces. Gripen doesn't kill the F-35 program. It undermines the belief that there is only one path forward. And that shift, from replacement to diversification, is what truly unsettles NATO planners. The future isn't one jet, one system, one command chain. It's mixed, distributed, messy, hard to control. Gripen didn't just survive modern war simulations, it redefined what success looks like. And once that mental shift happens, you can't undo it. The shock isn't that Gripen performed well. The shock is that it exposed a truth NATO hoped would stay buried. The most dangerous weapon is not the most advanced one, but the one you cannot politically control. Sweden didn't challenge NATO with force. It challenged NATO with proof. And that's why this story matters. Because once fear replaces certainty, the world changes.